I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently, the Lifepreneur podcast. I'm a hyperachiever turned lifepreneur, and after a decade of coaching ambitious leaders, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. This podcast is for the everyday leader ambitious for a rich, out-of-the-box life. This is your weekly nudge and reminder to take a risk to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. I want to start the podcast by saying I discovered a new review of this podcast and I want to share it with you. Love the way this podcast inspires a shift in thinking to bring joy, peace, confidence, purpose, and so much more to life. Thank you, Phoenix Loves Words, for leaving that review. It made my day. And if you've been listening for a while, would you make my day and leave a rating and a review? They make me very happy and keep me going, honestly. And we want to grow the listenership of this podcast, and we need your help to do so. Today, we're talking boredom. But it's not going to be boring, I promise. It's a super kind of strange, but super important topic. I'm someone who can get bored very easily. Are you? I have to change things up a lot to take care of my boredom. Boredom can be stressful. And if you're busy and still finding yourself bored, it can be even more stressful. Here's the thing. Boredom is a state of mind. Think of it like this. Your mind is a house and boredom is a room in the house that you can sometimes find yourself in and feeling like the door is locked and you can't get out. This is a terrible feeling. And if you stay here too long, you might even find yourself questioning everything in your life and feeling like your life needs a major overhaul when in fact, the door just needs to be opened so that you can move around and have more freedom and look out the windows and walk out the front door and on and on and on. It's really about creating a shift in your mind. So today I want to give you the key to the door so that you can get yourself out anytime. By the way, this applies to boredom, but can apply to other unpleasant states of mind too. The key to overcoming boredom. So the last couple of weeks, I found myself on many coaching calls, really helping people crack open their thinking, generate new ways to see a situation that feels heavy, fixed, boring, overwhelming, or whatever it is. And I love helping you see where you have innate abilities that you can use to set yourself free, lighten up your load, give you new ideas, and that allow you to approach an old, stale situation in a new and different way. What we're doing in these moments when I'm coaching someone is innovating. Innovate is one of the principles of lifepreneurship. And lifepreneurship, we talked about in episodes 73 and 74, if you want to take a peek back. The principle of innovate is simply using your innate creativity to alter your life experience. It means doing things differently or doing things you've never done before. Like an entrepreneur challenges the status quo and pushes the boundaries to achieve growth in their business, a lifepreneur takes these same approaches and applies it right into the moments of everyday life. The principle of innovation is to be an everyday innovator, someone who refuses to feel trapped by their circumstances or frame of mind, to be unwilling to settle for mediocrity, someone who taps into their innate creativity to design their relationships, their work, their family life, home, routine, and more. Hey, I'm popping in to let you know that we have some exciting news. We have merch, t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more. You can now support the show by shopping the merch, gear for the everyday life innovator. Check out the Lifepreneur shop. Link will be in the show notes. Enjoy. This principle of innovate requires 3 things. 1, to tap into your creativity. And if you're wondering if you have it, I promise you do. Number 2, let go of old, stuck, outdated ideas. And number 3, be willing to develop brand new ideas or put old ideas together in a new, fresh way. The pitfall of boredom One typically solves boredom by filling your plate with more things. I've done that. Have you? In fact, I was talking to a high-performing sales exec just this past week, and he described a very similar thing where his calendar is full of lots of amazing things that he loves, both personally and professionally, but he hates his calendar. It's not life-giving because there's no space to breathe. He's just showing up, but he's not really present. And here's the thing, it's because what he deeply needs is something more meaningful. A life too full of great things doesn't always feel great. And this is similar to boredom. We can fill our lives with busyness and still feel bored. So boredom isn't solved by doing more things or having more activities or taking more things on, which is often what our brain wants us to think. What's really missing is meaning. And so to solve a boredom problem that you have, you want to look to fill your life with something different, something more meaningful, and see what happens. This is where the principle of innovate comes in real handy. Using the principle of innovate to overcome boredom, here's what that looks like. Don't let your boredom take you down. It's just a state of mind. You're in charge. And so you want to grab the reins and know when to innovate. I had a great mentor once say, if you are bored, you're being boring. And I remember kind of being offended when I first heard that. And then really realizing how great is that, because it puts the power back where you are to shift this state of mind. You know, I realize now that as a kid, I got bored really easily. And I think it's because I spent a lot of time alone and a lot of time with adults. And that was boring. My siblings were 7, 10, 12, and 14 years older than I. I had to learn from an early age to be creative to solve boredom and generate ideas and find new ways to entertain myself. I remember my mom telling me often to just go entertain myself. And I really had to learn how to do that at a very young age. And it's evolved over the years and become a way that I really navigate everyday life's problems and situations and feel a deep desire to experience this maximum fullness of life. I don't know about you, but I like to be on the go. And I know that in order to live true to my values in my life, it requires more relaxation. But because I can become bored really easily. And if I don't have a plan, that boredom can get filled with just doing more work or being busy doing nothing. If you find yourself bored, it might not be because you need a major change or overhaul, which sometimes boredom can lead you down that rabbit hole in your mind, kind of questioning everything like something's majorly wrong with your life. And often it's not necessarily that. What you need is just to exercise this innovate muscle right where you are to shift your frame of mind. I want to give you some real tangible ideas that you can apply right to your life to really add more meaning and vitality to the moment. And I'm laughing as I'm preparing this podcast because this list I'm going to give you reminds me of when I was a kid. I used to make these to-do lists. And it was a way to solve boredom. So I would literally, I'd go over to a friend's house and I would either have a list already, how crazy weird is that? Or we would make a list together of things we could do. And I wish I could pull out some of those lists because we'd probably have a whole lot of fun cracking up at that. But I've got one for you today. So here are some ideas that will help you get creative and mix things up in your day. And this can be a solve to boredom, but it can also be an antidote to any frame of mind or unpleasant frame of mind that you find yourself in. So the first one is to journal. I know you're not surprised, but journaling is a playground for your mind. So if you find yourself stuck in any sort of frame of mind, journaling is a great way to get in there and kind of mix it up and stir it up and take yourself somewhere new with your thinking. So journaling is a great way. You can just take 5 minutes turning on some great music and moving your body. Always a good way to change your frame of mind. Something that often helps me is to put on a new podcast, something that's like an entirely different topic that you normally wouldn't listen to. I remember one day doing this in my car while I was driving somewhere and putting on a photography podcast. And it was like, just took me out of my normal rut of thinking, helped me to actually start to think about things very differently, and just took my mind in new channels and grooves, which is always a good thing. Go the long way home, drive a different way home. Take your focus off yourself and put it onto someone else. This works for a bad mood. It works for when you find yourself spiraling in negative thinking. I can't tell you how many times I have been preparing for a coaching call and feeling like I'm not in the right state of mind, like that I want to bring for my clients. And I know now that just showing up and getting engaged and present in the moment of talking to my client and getting in their world entirely, I always end the call in a completely different state of mind. Another way is to do something you wouldn't normally do. So send that email you've been putting off, or take that bold action you've been thinking about, or say the thing you've been thinking in your head but you hadn't shared. Tell your spouse that you noticed how pretty their eyes look today. Look at your loved one in the eyes and share something loving that you don't always say. Light a candle at dinner. Take your lunch outside today and put a blanket down and have a picnic. Apply for a job that intimidates you. How about taking a mindful walk? Walk with a question in mind, and you just might find the answer. Make a new recipe. You get the idea. Be creative. Do anything out of the ordinary to move your state of being out of the rut you find yourself in. Simple, yes. Easy to do, not always. Effective, yes, yes, yes. Sometimes you can innovate and figure out how to do things differently or generate a fresh new idea in a journal on your own. Sometimes you can do this with a friend. And sometimes what you really need is someone outside your circle that can help you see the blind spots, remember your truth, see you beyond where you are, and show you how to get there. That's my favorite thing to do. I'd love to do this for you. My contact information is in the show notes. Reach out and let's set up a time to talk. In closing, where in your life are you stuck on autopilot, bored, bumping up against a challenge? And how can you take this principle of innovate and mix things up, flip things on their head, turn it inside out, give yourself a fresh perspective? I invite you to do something differently, something you've never done before. Challenge the status quo, dig a little bit deeper. You just might be surprised what you find. It's usually much closer than you think. Hey, will you screenshot this episode where you're listening and tag me in social media at Carla S. Reeves? I'd love to start a conversation and hear about your number one takeaway from this episode. Have an incredible day. Do something different, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please share it and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.